Chapter 1. A Boy Named George. He was born on February 22nd, 1732, in the British colony of Virginia. Not in a log cabin, not in a moment of divine lightning, just in a modest plantation house on Pope's Creek, to Augustine and Mary Ball Washington. His father was a landowner, planter, and ironworks investor. Not rich by British standards, but in colonial Virginia, where hierarchy was everything, the Washingtons sat comfortably near the top. George wasn't born poor. He wasn't born great. He was born with potential. And in this world, that meant land. George's childhood wasn't marked by trauma or excess. It was marked by order, discipline, structure. His father died when George was 11, which meant no inheritance of the family's best lands. Those went to his older half-brothers. But George had something else, obsession. He became fixated on surveying. He loved maps, measurements, property lines. While other boys rode horses for fun, George was calculating elevation and angles. He wanted status, not by bloodline, by effort. And in Virginia, effort meant ambition. And ambition meant aligning yourself with the British system. At 16, George joined a surveying expedition across western Virginia, not just for money, though he made plenty, but for mastery. The land became his language. Rivers, ridges, soil types. What others saw as wilderness, he saw as opportunity. And opportunity, for a young man without a legacy estate, meant advancement. And in that era, there was only one way to advance quickly: join the military. George wasn't sent to war. He asked for it. He studied British military manuals like gospel, practiced drills, wrote formal letters to governors, begging for commission. At 20, he was made a lieutenant colonel in the Virginia militia, barely trained, poorly paid, but proud. And that's when the story shifts. Because George Washington didn't participate in history, he triggered it. In 1754, the British and French were locked in a tense standoff over territory in the Ohio Valley. Young Washington, ambitious and eager to prove himself, was sent to warn the French to back off. They didn't. So George came back with soldiers, found a small French scouting party, opened fire. One of the men he killed? A French diplomat. Oops. The French retaliated, and within months, Britain and France were at war, not just in America, but across the globe. What began as a local colonial dispute spiraled into the 7 Years' War, the first true world war, fought on multiple continents. And the guy who lit the match? A 22-year-old Virginian with a musket, a uniform too big for his body, and a desperate need to impress the crown. Washington's early military career was mixed. He showed courage under fire, but also made critical mistakes. He surrendered at Fort Necessity. He watched hundreds die at Braddock's defeat. But he survived, and learned, and rose. And by the time the war ended, George Washington wasn't just a colonial officer. He was a man who'd seen the British Empire up close, the bureaucracy, the arrogance, the disregard for colonial lives. And part of him began to wonder, what if they didn't deserve this land after all? But that thought was still years away. For now, George Washington wanted 3 things: status, and a legacy, and he'd do anything to get them.